Empire Oil is DeSmog UK's latest big investigation, and it looks at the London Oil Hub, which is basically a series and a host of small oil and gas companies which are headquartered in London that no one has really heard about. And these companies are using offshore accounts and tax havens to hide their ownership or manage their business assets. And they are operating in remote places around the world, developing countries, in Africa, for example. And what they're doing is that they're using the concentration of financial services in London and the lack of regulation to operate beyond any kind of scrutiny. So AIM is actually a shortcut for the alternative investment market, and that's a long name to say that it's the junior market of the London Stock Exchange, so which is different from the main market, which is where the FTSE 100 and FTSE 250 companies are listed. AIM was set up in 1995 for small and fast-growing companies to raise money from institutional investors and ordinary taxpayers, and it's basically a place where small companies can raise funds and then develop a business strategy or business assets. AIM matters because it has a light touch regulation system, which critics have blamed for allegations of widespread corruption and fraud. And this self-governance system has been blamed for basically failing to tackle these allegations and allowing corporate wrongdoing and malpractice to flourish on the market. And this matters because at the centre, the heart of the financial institution in London, you have an environment in which corruption and fraud are allowed to flourish, go unchecked and unnoticed, and no one's really looking. The UK Parliament has shown willingness to root out corruption and money laundering from the heart of London. But really, if the government is serious about doing this, what we need to do is to look at the regulation on the London Stock Exchange, which includes AIM. And at the moment, what is really happening is that these small and big corporations are allowed to operate beyond any form of scrutiny in a completely deregulated context. I was lucky to be able to go up to Manchester and attend BP's AGM, and that was a real insight really into what shareholder activism is. So BP's AGM was held in Manchester for the first time. It's usually held in London. BP said it was because more than 40% of its shareholders live north of Birmingham. Critics have said this was actually just a way of getting protesters not to attend the AGM. Anyway, there was about 200 people in the room, and BP's AGM has usually seen up to 1,000 people or more. So this was quite an empty AGM. Shareholder activism is really a fantastic way for activists to put pressure on these big companies. This is because you can't get closer to the action, really. Shareholders are able to ask questions directly to the board of directors and hold them to account on what they are doing to tackle climate change. For about 3 hours, BP was grilled on climate questions. So it's a very direct way of putting pressures on these companies and also hopefully putting pressures on other investors and maybe let them to think that they could maybe use their investments in a different way. Obviously, shareholder activism has to be used with other form of activism for it to be really efficient. But it's a very interesting form of campaigning today. INEOS is one of the leading fracking companies in the UK, and actually it made the news recently because its CEO, Jim Ratcliffe, has come out of one of the UK's richest men. Scotland banned fracking last October, and now INEOS is trying to overturn the ban. And actually more than that, they're trying to force the Scottish government to pay back compensation for the investment in the infrastructure they've put in Scotland. This is really significant because actually fracking has been opposed all over the country at local government level, and INEOS trying to challenge a democratic vote in Scotland shows that this is really a story about big corporate power versus democracy. The government is forced to come up with a new clean air strategy because it was taken to court 3 times by environmental lawyers at Client Earth. Every time they were defeated. Now they've got a 4th chance to come up with a plan, and they have to finalise the plan in October. So this latest strategy is looking at ways of reducing illegal levels of air pollution from agriculture, industry and wood-burning stoves, for example. But actually, Client Earth has accused the government of running out of ideas, and they said they were baffled that this new consultation on the plan is not actually bringing to the table new ideas. Client Earth has also been allowed to take the government to court again if ever they believe that the measures taken by the government are not robust enough to tackle air pollution. So this is a bit of a wait and see whether the government is able to put a plan together that is fit for purpose. For those who don't know, Liam Fox is the International Trade Secretary in the UK government. And since Brexit, he's basically been touring the world trying to secure new trade deals with countries outside of the European Union. Over the bank holiday weekend, he visited Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, and this was in a bid to promote 68 projects worth more than £30 billion to investors. These projects are basically backed and supported by UK companies. There's an agency called the UK Export Finance, and their role is to open line of credits to UK companies to enter the supply chains of big projects around the world. And this is basically why Liam Fox was in Bahrain, to try and boost UK exports. Now, this is also interesting because Bahrain is a big oil country, and the UK EF has repeatedly given millions of pounds to support fossil fuel projects all over the world. We have no details at the moment over which exact projects are UK companies supporting in Bahrain, but it would be very interesting to find out. Liam Fox says Britain is open for business, but I think we should have some concerns about the way in which the UK is embracing post-Brexit deregulation, because really what this means is that UK companies are allowed to use places like the London Stock Exchange to boost their credibility, using it as a cloak of respectability to then operate in parts of the world where environmental and social standards are minimal, sometimes non-existent, and no one really knows what they're up to. And I think this is where independent media plays a really important role, because this is also part of our job to follow these stories when we have no pressure from big corporations to do so. We have quite a fun story coming up about the links between FIFA and the fossil fuel industry. This is ahead of the World Cup starting in Russia on the 14th of June, and it will sort of explore the big oil and fossil fuel sponsorships of FIFA. So if you're interested in football and want to find out a bit more about their links with the industry, you can check DeSmog UK's website in the next couple of weeks.